Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up, and make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are picking back up again with Avengers, New Avengers, right? The collapse of everything, the death of all that stuff. And picking up from the last video that we made, this one we pick up with the Illuminati, right? And this is really cool because this kicks off with the idea of what the Illuminati have been doing, right? More so in terms of like expanding their roster and so on and so forth. Now, for those of you guys who recall the last video that we did, we talked about how Amadeus Cho, who's like the 8th smartest person in the world, had become part of the Illuminati, and their purpose was, or at least his purpose was, to break into basically the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. and to download some information and get it to the Illuminati themselves. What we end up getting is kind of the other half of that equation, right? In the sense that the Illuminati were actually contacting Amadeus Cho, talking with him, and what they've been doing for the last 8 months. And what we end up finding out is that during this 8-month time skip, right, where we just jumped forward by 8 months, we had this situation where basically the S.H.I.E.L.D. has constantly been after the Illuminati, right? And they've been cutting them off at almost every single angle. And one of the things we end up learning here is they end up going low tech. Now, the cool thing about this is that they're actually in a base of operations right now. This was introduced as part of Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run, and specifically it was introduced under the events of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? His S.H.I.E.L.D. miniseries, which we can cover if you guys are interested. It doesn't really pertain to any of what's going on right now, but it does kind of give you the background in terms of how S.H.I.E.L.D. came into existence. So invoking characters like Leonardo da Vinci, different things like that. Let me know if that's something you guys are interested in seeing. But one of the things that's going on is that the Illuminati are also met by the arrival of Captain Britain, right? Brian Braddock. And he makes this offhanded remark that he's the last of the Captain Britons. And we'll actually find out how far deep that goes here, probably here in a little while. But one of the things that he kind of comments about is how the Illuminati are so advanced, and how it is that they're moving, how they're functioning in such a way to where they're really going so low tech, right? At the same time, like once Amadeus Cho gets the information and downloaded, of course we saw in the last video that he was essentially captured by S.H.I.E.L.D., right? So his signal immediately goes offline. This jumps next to day 2. And one of the things that happens is that the Incredible Hulk sort of comments to Captain Britain, where he asks the question like, man, we're traveling so low tech. His response is because S.H.I.E.L.D.'s tracking everywhere we go, right? Like we could use those translocators where we teleport, but S.H.I.E.L.D. managed to hack the frequency. And even though they do hack it, and even though it takes them a couple hours to realize where we're at, what it means is that like if we teleport from one location to the next, we only really have a couple hours in order to focus on what it is that we're doing. And while we can do a lot within the span of 2 or 3 hours, we could do a lot more in the span of a whole day, right? So that's kind of what they're doing. They're also looking to sort of track down Namor. But what they're doing here is that in the aftermath of Amadeus Cho being captured, they've basically created a device, right? And this is kind of sort of interesting. You know, it's something that you don't really see all that often. And in fact, I don't really think you've ever seen it before, but where they have these translocation devices inside their hands, and these can be used for a lot of different purposes. One of the other things that it does is it allows Reed Richards to basically hack the signal and then turn it into a visual concept, meaning where you have like radio waves emanating from like this device, right? It just literally sends out a beacon, sends out a radio wave and says, hey, I'm here, I can teleport or do whatever it is I need to do, that they can ride that frequency and in turn watch everything that's going on. It's a pretty advanced bit of technology and well beyond any real possibility, I imagine, but it does give us a scene where Amadeus Cho is basically being interrogated by S.H.I.E.L.D. And of course, he's met with the arrival of Susan Storm. Now, again, Susan Storm had turned against Reed, right? She turned against her husband. And one of the things that kind of goes on, we'll find a little more information about this later on, but she feels betrayed by Reed Richards, and that's why she had essentially turned against him. But one of the things that happens here is that you have Amadeus Cho kind of being a little bit of a smart aleck. And it's sort of funny because Amadeus Cho was in a lot of ways depicted as a character who kind of got carried away by his own intelligence, right? In the sense that he wasn't like useless, right? It wasn't like, you know, he just wouldn't fight because he's like, I'm too smart for this. It was one of these things where he is exceedingly smart, and anybody he thinks that's less intelligent than him is somebody just not worth paying attention to or toying with. And in fact, you do get this amazing sort of scenario where you end up having Susan Storm basically says like, I know a lot about you, right? Like we know all kinds of stuff about you. Like we know you're one of the smartest humans on the face of the planet. Like we know that you tested in like the top 1% of all people who were tested, at least in terms of their overall intelligence. And the response of Amadeus Cho is that doesn't really matter, right? That's totally irrelevant, right? Because if we extrapolate this out, then testing inside that 1 percentile or whatever it is, that still means that there's 250 million people out there who are as smart as me. That's not a good thing. Like that's not okay. Like that doesn't mean anything. It means there's 250 million people who are as smart or smarter than I am. So to quantify me in a percentage base is stupid, because I'm smarter than that, right? I'm smarter than almost anybody out there, with the exception of, like, you know, Reed Richards and the Incredible Hulk, depending on the circumstance, Tony Stark, you know, Black Panther, different people like that. And Susan Storm kind of gets irritated here, right? She gets a little flustered. And that was always kind of the nature of her character, not so much in the sense that she felt stupid in comparison to somebody like Reed, but the fact that when it came to like some of the super smart people in Marvel Comics, they were always written in this way where they had this tendency to look at people who were less intelligent than they were and seem like they kind of have to walk them through the process of making things make sense, right? Like, I'll explain this to you, but like, I'm gonna hold your hand. I'm gonna assume that there's nothing about this that you could understand. And while it was never really Reed's intention to make Susan Storm feel stupid, the result is that a lot of times she did. And dealing with somebody like him, and then at the same time having somebody like Cho, who's almost kind of like this physical embodiment of how she felt whenever she was talking with Reed and felt, you know, not really able to keep up, it kind of pisses her off. And so she basically tells him, like, time's running out for the Illuminati, right? I'm going to catch every single one of you. I'm going to catch you all. There's nothing you can do to stop me. Now, the other part of this is that the information that Amadeus Cho was tasked with accessing and then downloading to the Illuminati were weapons designs by Tony Stark. And this is very important here. And the reason why is because you're dealing with some pretty smart folks, right? You're dealing with like Bruce Banner, you know, Professor Hulk, whatever you want to call him, you know, just the Hulk, Professor, it doesn't really matter. You got Beast, of course, who's really, really smart. You got Reed Richards, you got these guys. But the reality of this is that despite their intelligence is usually in a particular field, right? Reed Richards is kind of the only exception. His intelligence is basically kind of in everything, right? The guy knows almost everything about everything. But Beast, the Incredible Hulk, their intelligence is in genetics, right? Like biology, just understanding how the human body works, gene therapy, different things like that, manipulating or I guess controlling genes and so on. They're not really weapons experts. That was Tony Stark. Tony Stark was the weapons guy. Tony Stark was the guy who was inventing technology and weapons for a time that hadn't yet come, right? That was basically his entire idea. And downloading all these schematics, there's so many of them, right? There's all kinds of weapons that were developed by Tony Stark, like just a zillion different designs, right? Like 653 separate designs are what Beast refers to. And not all of them are going to be winners, but it gives them a lot of information that they can use to take on the Cabal, as well as to find a way to stop the incursions. The problem with this is that in the middle of all of that, they're suddenly met by T'Challa, right? They're suddenly met by Black Panther, who basically says, like, this is it, like, I've got to come in fast, I've got to translocate. And they're like, no, I mean, if you do that, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s going to be able to track us. And he's like, I have no choice, right? Like it's at the situation's as bad as it's been. Like, it's total failure here in Wakanda. I gotta go, right? And so he basically ends up teleporting directly to them, which, as we saw in the previous video, was the result of Proxima Midnight and those guys basically invading Wakanda, the necropolis, and then taking out Black Panther. And so as soon as he translocates in, then the question is, what happened, right? The question of Reed is, what possibly happened that you had to teleport back here so fast? And the response of Black Panther is, the Golden City has fallen, right? Wakanda is now gone. Like, we cannot go back to Wakanda. There's nothing that we can do there. And so what it does is it jumps to S.H.I.E.L.D., right? It jumps to Rome. And we basically end up having like this package that's being deployed, right? It's a highly militaristic mission, right? It's just like sending this package through. And what we end up finding out is that this is Hawkeye. Now, here's the coolest thing about this. Hawkeye is such an easy character to overlook, right? He's such an easy character to overlook and to dismiss. And even myself, like, I'm guilty of that. Like, I'm guilty of looking at Hawkeye and just being like, hey, he shoots arrows, wahoo, you know, like, in the grand scheme of people like Matthew Malloy and the Marquis of Death, who cares about Hawkeye? And that's kind of true, right? Like, when you compare him to like high-level reality warpers, sure. Who's anybody compared to those guys? But the reason why Hawkeye is so cool is because Hawkeye has all kinds of prodigious training. But the other thing is, when he fires, he doesn't miss. And if what you wanted to do was to basically take out a handful of people, especially the Illuminati, right? Black Panther, Beast, the Incredible Hulk, Reed Richards, these guys, Hawkeye's the one you send in. Hawkeye is the guy that you send in there to neutralize all those forces. The problem is, as soon as he gets in there, the entire place appears to be abandoned. And he keeps referring to Archangel, right? He keeps talking to this guy, the guy who's basically running the show. And we end up finding out here, the person who's running the show is Captain America, right? Is Steve Rogers. That Steve Rogers is now hunting down the Illuminati. Now, a little bit of filler here, because a lot of you guys who have never read this or who are like brand new to Marvel Comics are like, why is he old? Okay, and why do you have Sam Wilson who looks like Captain America? Bit of an exposition here. So leading up to this particular story, and this is why you have the 8-month gap, so you can kind of have stories involving characters that were basically running, coming up on their end to the point where this story begins to pick up, or at least this portion of Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers begins to pick up. What you had was a Captain America run by a guy named Rick Remender, and Rick Remender had an amazing run. It was incredibly good. But one of the things that he did here is he had Captain America fight a villain called the Nail, who siphoned off the super soldier serum from Captain America. And what it did is it forced Steve Rogers into being old. The reason why this was done is so that Steve Rogers could basically be moved out of the way for Captain America and replaced with Sam Wilson to become the new Captain America. Now, whether or not you agree with this doesn't really matter. It's outside the scope of this video, but that was the move that Marvel made. And so that's why Captain America's old. When you compound this with the fact that Steve Rogers had remembered everything that had gone on with the Illuminati, then it all leads to this moment, right? The fact that they had wiped his memory of the incursions, all that kind of stuff. He recollected all of that during Original Sin. You guys see how all this stuff basically ties together, right? How all these things that happen, whether it's in Marvel Comics itself or it's done by Jonathan Hickman earlier, how it all comes together and creates a cohesive whole. It's why he's so good at writing. And so when Hawkeye basically rings into Captain America and says, like, there's something here, like there's something down here that you need to come and see. Once the SHIELD forces get there and Captain America arrives there alongside Maria Hill, you end up having this kind of chess game being played between the Incredible Hulk and Beast. And this is probably one of the best moments of the entire story because, dude, they talk so much trash. It's absolutely amazing, right? You've got like Susan Storm, you've got Hawkeye, you've got Maria Hill, and you got Steve Rogers, and you got Sam Wilson down here. And the message that they're playing, or at least this conversation, keeps repeating itself, right? It says, I'm beginning to think that we're going to be playing this game for, like to the very end, basically. And it kind of keeps repeating, right? There's a little more to it. But Captain America picks up 2 and 2 together and says, okay, so I need to move. So like he moves one of the pieces, and then the entire simulation begins to converse with him. And it's nuts, right? Because Beast is just kind of sitting there like cleaning his glasses, and they're just sort of taunting him, and it's like, man, like you're probably wondering how it is that we're interacting with you, right? Like holograms are basically predetermined, pre-programmed sequences, right? So you can create a hologram that can do a thing, but you can't really create a hologram that can react in the real time. But the reason why we can do that is because you're predictable, because you're Captain America. You're about as predictable as the sunrise, right? That's just the nature of who you are. And if you don't believe me, then let's go ahead and take a shot here. Everybody out there in the world wants to believe they're special. They want to believe there's something unique about them that nobody else has. But the reality is that once you boil it down, people are basically just the same, right? You study personalities long enough and you come to the realization everybody's all kind of the same person. Now, it is possible, like Beast says, it is possible that you think I'm being disingenuous, but would you be surprised to know that there's a 95% chance that either Clint, Sam, or subdirector Maria Hill is with you? All 3 of them are there. There's an 80% chance that you brought all 3. And then the Incredible Hulk's like, I would take those odds. And then he says, and oh my stars, there's even a 60% chance that you asked Susan Storm to come with you. You're predictable, man. And now the question is, what does all this mean, Steve? Like, what does it mean that I can, within a percentile better than 50, that I can predict what you are going to do? What it means is that you really are predictable. It means you really are a super predictable person. You were predictable when we first met you. You're still predictable. We know what you're going to do before you do it. And it's important that you understand this message, Steve, because if you want to catch us, if you want to pick up the Illuminati, you want to capture us, you got to start thinking a little better than this, right? You literally have to start thinking smarter. The downside to this is you're not that smart. So at the end of the day, you're really only ever just going to be chasing us. You just haven't quite caught up to the fact that that's all you're ever going to do. It's the greatest instance of trash talk ever, right? They basically said, Steve, you're never going to catch us because you're not smart enough. Like, it's the coolest thing. Because it's true. It's 100% true. Captain America is just not smart enough to catch up to them. That's just the way that it is, right? And so what you end up doing is picking back up on the SHIELD helicarrier with Steve Rogers, right? Once he gets there and it's kind of, Susan Storm and so on, basically kind of rewatching this whole thing where Terax the Tamer, as part of the Cabal, had basically shown up to the United Nations. And this is one of the things that's not really given in the real moment, it's kind of given to us in hindsight, but he had shown up to the United Nations and he had basically said, the universe as you know it is ending. right? Like your universe is going to die and there's nothing you can do to stop it, but there is something that we can do. We as the Cabal can do this, right? If you give us Wakanda, if you give us the necropolis, if you give us that country, then we will save your world and we will save your universe. But understand this, the heroes out there, the Iron Man, like Iron Man and Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four and Black Panther and all these people, all these folks that you call heroes, they knew and they didn't tell you because they didn't trust you with the truth. But it's time that you be trusted with this information, right? Give us what we want and we will save the day. And that's how it was that the forces of the Black Order, that Proxima Midnight and all those guys, that's how it was they got into Wakanda. They were allowed to be there, right? They were given sanction there by the United Nations. They were told, you can have whatever you want, just make sure you save the day. And then the Cabal just started doing what they were doing best, which was wiping out everything that they could find. And so it's one of these things where it all just really kind of seems to be crumbling down, right? Like everything's falling apart. Enter Carol Danvers. And Carol Danvers basically says, okay, so there's a couple of residual mental imprints that the psychics were able to pick up, but really not much more than that. We know that like Captain Britain has joined their roster now. We know that that T'Challa was there for a brief amount of time, but aside from that, we don't really know anything else. Captain America starts asking questions like, are there people that we can get to our side? Can we get Betsy Braddock? But the response of Carol Danvers is, like Psylocke is protected by the X Nation. She's protected by mutants. We can't just go there. It's one of the reasons why if we capture the Illuminati and we get a hold of Beast, we're going to have a problem because the X-Men are going to want to take him back and deal with him on their own terms. They're not going to want to let us do that. And the response to Steve is they don't get that choice, right? Like he joined the Illuminati, he made his choice, he knew what he was doing. The X-Men don't get to decide who it is that is, that isn't and is not put on trial for the crimes that they commit. That's not the way this works. If they have a problem with it, sorry about their luck. We can go to war again, right? And like it won't be like last time. We'll win, and so it's kind of cool. Like it's interesting to see like how extreme Captain America's become because he's hell-bent on tracking down the Illuminati, right? It's the one thing he wants to do more than anything else. He also ends up learning that like Robert DaCosta bought Advanced Idea Mechanics, which sucks for SHIELD even more because with everything that's happened, SHIELD's abilities in terms of like their authority, the ability to tap into like the world's intelligence agencies has been curtailed by an insane level. They have just enough leash to like monitor other countries, but they can't really act without getting some info or getting approval from like their prime ministers or whatever it is. The days of SHIELD being able to just do what it needs to do in order to serve its purpose are gone, right? Like they're the only thing they have real free reign over is the United States, and that's it. And as long as the Illuminati are outside the US, it greatly hampers SHIELD's ability to function. It's one of the smartest moves that they could have made. But Robert DaCosta buying Advanced Idea Mechanics gives him a wealth of technology and resources that are equal to or way beyond what SHIELD currently has, and is in its current form where it's handicapped, right? And so all that's really being brought in here by Carol Danvers is just more bad news, right? Like literally the Illuminati's resources are growing by the day. Like Robert DaCosta's not on our side. He's working against us, or at least seems to be working for his own goal. He's got the resources of Advanced Idea Mechanics, so there's really not much we can do for him or do with him. And those Avengers out there that decided not to side with you when you dumped information about what the Illuminati were doing and actually agreed with their cause, they've gone off the radar, right? Like they're gone. Black Widow, Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew, like we don't know where they are. Like they're off reservation. Like we have no clue where they are. They turned off their transponder signals. So like you've basically created another civil war within the superhuman community. Sure, they're not fighting each other, but like they're on separate causes. And that's what's happened here, right? When Captain America revealed to the Avengers that the collapse of the multiverse, that like what the Illuminati were doing, it split the entirety of the superhero community. Those individuals who agreed that what the Illuminati were doing were wrong sided with Captain America. Everybody else either sided with the Illuminati or went their own way, right? And so it's kind of nuts, right? Like the entire community is fractured. What we end up doing here is one of the greatest revelations in the entirety of the story, right? Because you end up having Susan Storm, who's told by Captain America, like, let me talk to Carol Danvers, right? And so ultimately Susan Storm ends up leaving and he starts talking to Carol Danvers and he says, here's the thing, if you come back in here again in this meeting and you cannot give me any information about the Illuminati, even if there's nothing, then don't come in here, right? Like the next time you come in here, give me something to report. Whether it's that there's nothing to report or you have some bit of information, it doesn't matter, but do not come in here empty-handed again. And so you end up picking up 2 days later in this abandoned subway tunnel and you've got Susan Storm and she says, you can come out now. And the person she's talking to is Reed Richards. Like she's a spy. She's a spy for the Illuminati in Captain America's camp. It's a genius maneuver. Like Reed's like, do you think they bought it? And she's like, yeah. Like she's like, all I had to do was just pitch some story about how I was tired of feeling like I was, you know, less intelligent than you and being left hanging by you. Every time you go off of one of your campaigns, you don't tell me what's going on, that I'm left in the dark. All I had to do was just tell them that I was tired of it, right? Because it's common knowledge. It's common knowledge that Reed will like gallivant off on some adventure and not tell Susan Storm what's going on. And she gets pissed about it, right? She gets kind of angry about it. So it makes sense that like all she has to do is go to Captain America with that story. And in his desperation, he'll believe it, right? Because in times of desperation, people believe what they want to believe. And Captain America wants to believe that he's got people on his side, even if those numbers are dwindling by the day. And so it's awesome because they have this sort of moment, right? Where it's like, I miss you. Like I miss you so much, you know? And it's like, yeah, you know, Rita asks about the kids and they say, well, I mean, they're good, you know, but Franklin feels like he failed you. Like he feels like he failed you and your efforts to try to stop the incursion. What that means, we'll find out later. But it's another thing where she says like, Valeria has a message for you, right? Like your daughter Valeria, she wanted me to give you a message, but understand she's our daughter Reed and I love her more than anything, but know that like Valeria is not always right? Like she's like the third smartest person in the world. She's wildly intelligent, but she's not always right. The reason that matters is because the note that Valeria gave Reed it basically shows that like the Future Foundation, right? The kids, the smartest kids in the world, that like they were all working on a solution to try to stop the incursions. And Reed wanted them to work on it because kids have a way of using their imaginations in a way that adults simply can't do. And they can think of things that adults would normally never think of. But despite all of their resources, and this is important to understand, despite all of their resources, despite everything that Reed's done to try to figure out a way to end the incursions, despite everything that's happened, the formation of the Illuminati and their lack of desire to destroy worlds, Black Swan originally told Reed and all of them, like, there's no way for you to stop the incursions. But hoping against hope, Reed believed that there is a way to stop them. The downside to this is that the note Valeria reads says, you can't win, right? But like, it's time to find out a way to not lose. Now, I know that seems a little bit confusing, but it's important. Just because you don't win doesn't mean you lose. It doesn't mean it's game over. There's still a way for the heroes to find a way out of this whole thing. The job of Reed is to find a way to do that. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like. I will catch you all later. Peace.